The ranking member and I have a few more questions, and you may as well, Mr. Baird. But let me get to the heart of the matter. And the heart of the matter is, quite honestly, we've got a problem here. There's no getting around it. I think in each of your testimonies you pointed that. And so we want to try to find out, what do we do about it? And judging from what I'm hearing and for what we've heard, I can assure you that we in this committee, myself and ranking member, are prepared to move on some action to very quickly and decisively get a message to the European Union in a proper way. And secondly, we need to devise a way in which we can use our leverage to respond to this. We are the strongest, most powerful, and fairest economy and financial system in the world. And the European Union is really messing with the wrong tiger here. And we need to get that message out. Because if we don't, for example, this whole Emir situation is wrong so many ways. First of all, setting up a way in which you all become, or we become, what is affectionately called third countries. What does all that mean? Why? And then Great Britain is thrown in with that. And between the United States and Great Britain, we are the two largest, most significant financial systems. And they are operating in a very haphazard and dangerous way to themselves. We need to get that out. We also need to examine how we offer some form of retaliation. Do we pull back our market to them? We have the largest, so we have to think very seriously how we use our leverage. I hope we don't have to go there, but we got to send that message. And so what I want to do with this period is to hear from you and each of you in terms of what specifically you all would recommend that we here in Congress do. And the incubator of this action will be our subcommittee, because this is our territory. We have an excellent staff. The full bipartisanship of this committee is ready to spring into action quickly and decisively to do something. What that something is, we need to discuss and come to some decision very quickly onto what it is we need to do to make sure that our financial system, our market participants, are not put at a disadvantage on the world stage at this time or at any time. That's what I want to try to get to at this point. And may I please start with you, Mr. Duffy, on what it is you think we can do to address this problem with the European Union right now.
So I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, and as we've been talking about, I think you've already done a lot more than anybody else has done historically, just by holding this hearing and giving it the time and attention it so deserves. So that is greatly appreciated, and it's been so bipartisan. As I said earlier, it's a very powerful message when the United States Congress gets involved, not just the regulator. So I am very much appreciative of that, and I know the industry is as well. I want to go back to what one of your colleagues said earlier, that the UK is the bully. I don't believe the UK is the bully, nor is Mr. Maguire. I think Mr. Maguire and the UK are in the same situation as the US is right now. The EU is trying to show their dominance throughout this process on the Brexit, and that's part of what this hearing's about, and they're using the U.S. as part of their leverage against the U.K. So I don't believe they're the bully. As you said earlier, I think they are a very powerful economy, and they're going to maintain that. What Mr. Lucan said earlier is critically important, and I hope everybody reminded the statistics he gave. 70% of the German bond is traded outside of Germany. And if you really want to get to the heart of the matter, you get the German authorities in here and ask them what they think they're doing with their European counterparts in order to drive this regulation. Because if you take the liquidity out of the German bond, that will cripple their economy to a degree. And if that liquidity going into that bond is coming out of the UK and the US, which I believe a good chunk of it's coming out of the US, and you limit that, that would be a very powerful statement to limit that type of activity. Now, is that a good thing? No, absolutely not. But if they're going to go down this path, we have to also understand that we can just as well by doing it through the Part 30 process.
Thank you very much, Ms. Edmonds.
Look, I think you have a multitude of options and probably know better, certainly better than I do, and maybe better than the rest of us in the panel, of all the levers you have to pull. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about when you pull those levers, whatever they may, how they're perceived on the other side. You've heard us all talk about certainty, and anything that you can do to increase certainty, I think, is an absolute must. And you should find great favor in it when you're drafting whatever response you deem is appropriate and proportionate to make sure that it is promoting certainty. I think you should promote equivalence. We've taken a lead on this as a country. I don't know, on the regulatory side, I'm not exactly sure the benefit of us going a different direction in the leadership we've shown to date.
You did say
Equivalence.
equivalence.
Right? That is correct. So if we're providing a framework and supporting other frameworks that provide that level of deference through the equivalence process, and we're providing certainty along the way, I think what you're doing is a benefit for the marketplace as a whole, to be able to operate within a set of rules in order to manage the businesses they have, no matter where they are, from a hedge fund down to a farmer and everyone in between that you want to get to that have a critical function to play within our market system as a whole. Mm-hmm. And then if you don't get what you're looking for there, you got to be prepared to act. And those are the levers that you're going to know better than we are exactly what's best. This is not a binary decision that you're going to make, whichever one. There are going to be other actions and reactions to whatever you decide to do. And I think you have to look at that holistically, and you have a much better point of view or a vision of that than we're going to be able to see, because we're going to take your action and we're going to have to react to it, whatever that is. And we're going to have to change parts of our business, whether it's in London, whether it's in Chicago, or anywhere else here in the United States, in order to continue to provide for our customers. That's our job at the end of the day, is to get through all of it at the end of the day and give them some level that they can continue to manage their business within the confines of that regulatory framework. So I think the more, just to reiterate, the more that you can promote equivalence, the more you can promote certainty from that equivalence, and that being that leader by example, I think we get to a better place at the end of the day.
All right. Mr. McGuire, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. I make two remarks to your request. In the first instance, I'd just point to the long-established and well-working relationship between both the US and the UK financial systems and markets, and I would hold those up as the epitome of something that works and works well, and it works well in, to repeat what I said earlier, sunny days and rainy days, in good times and bad times. And I think it's important to lean on that when we talk about how equivalence and deference can work around the globe from financial markets. We have a model in place between the UK authorities and the US authorities for overseeing the firm that I lead. It works well, and I think that should be held up as a model, and I think it should be used as a artifact in explaining how things could and should work and do work. I think the second remark I would make is that when we talk around Tier 2, which has been referred to, it's a slight technical point in EMIR 2.2, right now things are in, let's say, a ambiguous state. There is a full range of tools available to the European authorities in the bucket of Tier 2. And it's really expected to be a continuum of either Tier 2 heavy oversight versus Tier 2 light oversight. But what's lacking and what makes us all nervous and gives us that lack of certainty and clarity that Mr. Edmonds refers to is there is no definition or precision around that. So I think the sooner there's more precision and definition of what Tier 2 means, what it means for each firm, what the kind of oversight that could potentially mean, I think that could very much help bring the temperature down here on how things are looked at from the third countries. But right now, absent that clarity and certainty, it's difficult. And key point being that determination of level 2 tiering is likely to commence towards the back end of this year and into Q1 2020. So the time, I would say, is opportune to request that level of specificity and definition.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Lucan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the most powerful tool that this committee has at the moment is its oversight function, this hearing being a part of that. There is an open comment period right now in Europe on EMIR 2.2. I would be sending a letter to those the ESMA agency and with the record of this hearing as part of that comment period. So they understand what the view of Congress is and the view of the United States might be on this topic. You certainly have the ability through your oversight to make sure that it is clear that there'll be collateral damage as a result of this EMIR 2.2 if the United States is not recognized as part of that regulation. I do want to make clear, though, on one of the issues that the Europeans have raised with us when we see them is that the CFTC over time, and this dates back to Dodd-Frank, has laws and regulations in place that regulate and require the registration of foreign CCPs. Now, the current chairman has said he wants to walk that back, and he wants to propose something very soon that would put in place a recognition regime like we're talking about. We have, because of the transition to the new chairman, that has not occurred yet. But I would give this new chairman some room, some breathing room to try to negotiate with the Europeans to get them to make the right choice. It reminds me of my parents. They would tell me you have two choices, choice one and the right choice. This committee can be very effective at making sure that they're making the right choice on this and allowing the new chairman to come in and help us to get us to that place.
Now, you said a letter. What would be the most emphatic points that we need to make within that letter? And I think you also mentioned, did you not, that we would send them this hearing in and of itself. And
this is part of the public record. This
Right.
hearing here, and and our testimony is part of the public record. They are they're in the midst of a consultation, and just like any public record, this is an important factor that should be a part of their determination. So, whatever cover letter you'd like to summarize the hearing here and your views, that includes the entire record of this hearing, I think would be important.
And you're saying within the European Union, who specifically, you mentioned the...
ESMA right now is
ESMA.
the agency that is holding, it has an open consultation period right now for this regulation.
All right. Good. All right. Thank you. Yes. Mr. Berger.
Thank you. The U.S. has a robust framework for the regulation and supervision of our clearinghouses, and that's what helps make the U.S. markets the most deep, liquid, and efficient markets in the world. And as market participants who are active on all the clearinghouses that are represented here, MFA members don't trust that blindly. We remain vigilant. We care about the governance and risk management practices at all CCPs that we participate on, and sometimes, comment on those to even enhance them further. To pick up on the points that Mr. Lucan just made, where we stand right now in the European process is they are evaluating how they approach two decisions. One is how they evaluate which foreign or non-EU CCPs they deem to be systemically important, and then if they make that decision that they're a systemically important or tier 2 CCP, then the next step is how do they evaluate whether the framework in that other jurisdiction is comparable, so they call it comparable compliance. And so I suspect everyone up here will be weighing in with advice on how they take those next steps in the process. So EMIR 2.2 is now a piece of legislation, but the implementing rules are still under development. So I still think there is ample opportunity for our voices to be heard, and your leadership in bringing attention to these important points will, I think, help amplify the voices that are providing advice to ESMA as they consider the next steps here.
Thank you. And now we'll recognize and hear from the ranking member, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr.